There's a problem with episode 9. 3 parts of it were allegedly said to have been mistakes made by Glitch, with the last one revealing how there could have been an entirely different ending for the show than the one we got, which started with this first mess up that the show's creator ended up actually responding to. You see, Digital Circus fans noticed a problem with this scene of Kaufmo talking to Jax after Ribbit's abstraction, as there ended up being more to it than you might think. In the background, it was discovered how there was a specific door icon that belonged to Gangle, only we know that Gangle wasn't supposed to have a door at all during this scene. You see, in this same flashback sequence that this scene came from in episode 9, we're also shown the specific moment where Gangle entered the Digital Circus for the first time, meaning it would be physically impossible for her door icon to have been shown in this previous scene during a time period where she isn't supposed to exist yet. But she isn't the only one, as Zooble's door icon was also mysteriously shown right next to Gangle's in this same scene. If you didn't know, the show's creator already confirmed that Zooble was the second to last character to appear in the circus, meaning they would have been introduced way later than Gangle, also making it impossible for their door icon to have been shown here. So what's really going on here with this scene? Well, we were given 2 specific explanations for these character door icons being shown, with the first being the fact that this scene was meant to get little details mixed up on purpose, as this part of the episode technically wasn't reality, rather it was being told from Jax's memory. It's his POV. This could easily be explained as Jax's memories simply being muddied due to his abstraction. All the major traumatic events are still accurate, but the background details will obviously get blurry, which actually went along perfectly with the little abstraction effects that popped up on screen during this specific flashback. A detail that could have been used to differentiate this part of the episode as skewed from the rest. It wasn't meant to be 100% accurate. Only our second explanation was actually given to us by the show's creator herself, Gooseworks, as she ended up directly responding to a post that called out this error for the first time. But in order to fully understand her response, we first need to cover our next mistake from the episode that actually destroyed part of the show's lore that was set up in an earlier episode, which started with this scene of Jax reacting to Ragatha's abstraction. You see, after Pomni offers to console Jax and help him feel better, he spontaneously attacks her, causing her to stop breathing for a minute, with her face additionally turning blue. But what was so significant about this attack scene, and how did it connect to lore that was set up earlier on in the show? Well, it turns out this actually isn't the first time we've seen a character temporarily stop breathing like this. Only when this concept was originally shown to us, all the way back in episode 3, we were also shown how a character losing their breath would unlock a specific trait that they each had. Ragatha's hair stands up straight, Gangle's mask begins spinning, Jax's trait is a secret, which we'll get to later on, and most importantly, Pomni changes colors, like what we're able to see here. Only the problem with this trait is that it completely goes against the scene we see later on of Jax attacking Pomni in episode 9. We can clearly see how instead of Pomni's face changing to be multiple different colors, it ends up staying blue throughout the entire process of her holding her breath. So what's going on here? Well, it turns out despite this original lore being introduced all the way back in episode 3, Gooseworks actually responded to it again recently, helping us figure out what was going on. You see, shortly after episode 9's release, a fan of the show brought up this old episode 3 lore by asking Gooseworks what Jax's special trait was when he holds his breath, as Jax was the character whose specific trait was kept as a secret, as I previously mentioned. Only Gooseworks deciding to respond to this post, telling us that he inflates, tells us that despite this original lore being brought up all the way back in episode 3, it was still likely meant to be relevant in newer episodes as well. Meaning Pomni's special trait not being shown in episode 9 while she's holding her breath wasn't because of this earlier lore changing in any way, rather it was simply a mistake that Gooseworks likely forgot to include while scripting out the show's finale. But getting to our third sort of mess up for the finale, it turns out there was more to the show's ending that many people didn't pick up on. What if I told you that this ending was likely meant to happen in a completely different way? But how do we know? Well, it turns out following episode 9, fans noticed how the ending specifically was missing something. For starters, it failed to resolve a few particular parts of the show's plot that were set up as important earlier on. I usually don't follow these kinds of conspiracy theories, but I'm pretty sure that TADC was supposed to have a different ending than what we got. There's simply too many pieces of evidence or plot points that pointed towards something different that ended up going nowhere, with these leftover plot points being said to include this first foreshadowing scene from episode 2, where Kane brought up the idea of getting humans and NPCs mixed up, only for this idea to never get mentioned again, as well as this scene during the intermission segment of episode 5, where each of the characters had a symbolic object randomly dropped on their heads, something that at the time was clearly being set up to lead to a big reveal later on, only for this reveal to never come. But how do we know for sure that these two concepts support the idea of an alternate ending for the show? Well, it turns out an alternate ending is also exactly what we were told of earlier on by the show's creator, Gooseworks. You see, a while ago, she set up the idea for a show ending concept that she said she would love to end up actually putting into one of her shows. Only the start of this ending concept strangely matched exactly what we saw in the Digital Circus 2. It was set in a bleak, brutal world, similar to what the Digital Circus's world turns into leading up to episode 9, featuring a group of characters trying to fight against some big problem, only for this problem to randomly disappear, just like what we saw at the very end of episode 8. Kane causing havoc for the circus members, only for Kinger to accidentally delete him, making their problem at the time go away. Only in Gooseworks' show ending concept, she continues on by saying how the characters additionally get separated and never cross paths again, something that, for the first time, differs from what we ended up seeing in the Digital Circus. But how do we know if this original ending concept was still connected to the official show? Well, it turns out an ending where the characters end up getting separated actually matches together perfectly with what the Digital Circus has been setting up for us behind the scenes. Little clues and foreshadowing from earlier episodes that started with our previously mentioned random object scene. On top of the scene being heavily symbolic, it clearly teased the characters being separated in a similar way to what was implied from Gooseworks' show ending concept. What if this same concept was how the Digital Circus was supposed to end? You see, originally, Gooseworks told us how she was planning a very dark ending for the show, something that matched up with the show's main inspiration, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Only the ending we ended up getting definitely didn't end up as dark as many fans were expecting. While this difference could have came down to small last-minute creative changes, it would also support the idea of a potential alternate ending similar to the one laid out for us in Gooseworks' earlier show ending concept. Gooseworks has come out to say she'd change the ending specifically if the Digital Circus fandom was bad, and while I don't think she'd actually do this, we know she was also dealing with heavy burnout at the time. There were multiple points where she came out to say how she had been struggling with certain aspects of the show a bit, which overall could have led to a change of heart towards how she wanted her show to end. But going back to Gooseworks' response to the first mistake found in episode 9, it turns out she said something I can't exactly show, as it was all just cussing, but this response implied that there was no lore significance to Gangle and Zooble's door icons randomly being thrown in our previously mentioned scene from earlier. She was just realizing the mistake in the episode for the first time and was upset at missing it earlier on during the show's production. Only there was one more potential problem from the episode that was never resolved. The fact that there was a big secret left over from it that many people missed. What was inside Jax's secret room? The same room shown locked up that was never revealed throughout the entire episode. Well, it turns out I'm able to finally reveal the truth about this room and what's inside in this video right here. So for everything we know about the Digital Circus, make sure to check it out.